A man trains 25 hours a day, determined to become the best in the world. But no matter how hard he practices, he cannot defeat his master, who is 80 years old and as thin as a rake. His master is just an unnamed wanderer in the martial arts community. The master tells him that his current skills are enough to support himself, and as long as he stays vigilant, he can live until old age. However, the man is not satisfied with this. He trains even harder, breaking 20 rocks with his bare hands every day and doing handstands on his index fingers for 2.5 hours. His efforts are not in vain. He becomes a well-known special-grade problem solver within the wanderer community. He comforts himself with the thought that he couldn't win against his master simply because the master is too powerful. After all, there is no one in the wanderer community who can match him. Therefore, he considers entering another field, one that his master absolutely forbids him from stepping into: the martial arts community. He believes he is ready to venture into the world, but unexpectedly, as soon as he enters the martial arts community, he is beaten so badly that he cannot get out of bed for nearly 10 years. As a result, he has to return to his hometown. There, he meets his other half. When they first meet, the silk clothing she wears looks to be worth at least 2 taels of gold. She must have been the daughter of a wealthy family. Compared to the man, who speaks in crude classical language, every word from her mouth showcases her knowledge. Even now, he cannot understand why such a woman would choose him. Such a beautiful and noble woman is his wife, and he does not want her to regret her choice. Thus, he begins to work hard to earn money. Even though he works 2 jobs a day and saves on expenses at all times, he feels that money is far from enough when he is with his wife. Whenever he hands his earnings to her, she bows and says, "Making money out there is really hard." Even when he says it's not necessary, she insists on it. It cannot be denied that every time she says this, he feels strength on his shoulders. Not long after, his wife becomes pregnant with their child. During that time, he feels like the happiest man alive. After his parents passed away, having a wife made him very happy as he was alone in the world. But now, he actually has his bloodline. He truly is about to become a parent, just like his name suggests. Yet, things do not go as planned. His wife has a difficult labor. The midwife asks Lu to choose whether to save the mother or the child, and Lu chooses to save the mother without hesitation. But his wife struggles to reach the door and insists that she must give birth to the child. Lu, unable to resist his wife, agrees to save the child instead. After a tense wait, the sound of a baby crying fills the room. His wife miraculously gives birth to triplets, 2 sons and a daughter. The man, who once didn't shed a tear after being stabbed 18 times, is now weeping uncontrollably while holding his children. But at this moment of happiness, his wife said to him, "I'm sorry." Lu's heart sank instantly. His wife weakly said, "I should have been by your side. I'm really sorry." It turned out that his wife's body was too frail, and after giving birth to 3 children, she suffered severe blood loss. The happiness of being a new father instantly turned into tears of sorrow as he had to send his wife away. He knelt on the ground, cursing heaven crazily. Clearly, he had never done anything that would harm others. However, the crying of the child in his arms pulled him back to reality. He temporarily entrusted the child to the midwife and then buried his wife alone. By nightfall, while sorting through his wife's belongings, he discovered that she had saved quite a bit of money over the years. After calculating, he found that this money should be enough for him and the children to live for 10 years. But he couldn't rely solely on the savings. After all, he didn't have any relatives. What would happen to the children if he died? So, he went to town to find a job. However, regarding the condition of high pay, little work, and close to home, the intermediary said it was impossible. But the intermediary recommended him a place. He heard that the Thousand Dragon Society and the Sword and Knife Sect were recruiting warriors, and the hours there were regular with considerable pay. Moments later, Lu arrived at the Sword and Knife Sect. The Sword and Knife Sect and the Thousand Dragon Society were among the top sects in the area. Lu was also not very sure if he could successfully pass the selection. However, he still gathered his confidence, thinking that he would be a special-grade problem solver, and passing the selection should be a given. Thus, he arrived at the Sword and Knife Sect to start the interview. The examiner gave him a piece of black rope, and after entering the testing area, someone guided Lu to where he needed to take the exam. Lu followed the instructions to the exam location. The first test was to lift a stone over his head to pass. Watching a group of people struggle to lift the stones, Lu felt puzzled. To him, these stones were just ordinary small rocks. Lu picked up the stone and easily lifted the giant rock over his head, which stunned everyone present. Next, the examiner asked him to move on to the second test. The second test was to jump over an 8-meter deep ditch filled with sharp weapons. This not only tested long jump, but also required strong mental fortitude. Lu leapt lightly and arrived safely on the other side in the next second. Then came the third test. On the way, Lu thought, "This is one of the for great forces selection for warriors. This exam is too easy." The third test was to use a mountain cutting knife to chop a wooden post. The examiner handed Lu a mountain cutting knife and asked him to begin the test. Lu didn't even use much force, and that wooden post was neatly split in two. With that, the exam was completely over. The examiner asked Lu what his name was. Lu replied that in his circle, everyone calls him a special grade problem solver. Upon hearing this, the other party remarked that he must be a wanderer. Then he proceeded to ask where Lu studied. However, Lu said he indeed had a master's sect but forgot it. The examiner was at a loss for words, surprised that someone would forget their master's sect. Then, the examiner asked Lu to follow him, saying he would recommend Lu as a first-level warrior. At that moment, Lu was attracted by the equipment beside him. The examiner explained that it was equipment used for selecting official disciples, and they must have forgotten to take it back since it wasn't valuable. He encouraged Lu to give it a try, specifying that he couldn't use weapons and could only strike with his bare hands. Lu lightly threw a punch, and that thing immediately began to wobble back and forth. Seeing this, the examiner smugly commented that it wouldn't be easily shattered. He said it would diffuse all of Lu's power at the moment of impact. To break it, you'd need at least 30 years of internal martial arts. Watching Lu throw another punch, the examiner scoffed, "That's not going to work." But the next second, he was dumbfounded as Lu's 3 punches actually made 7 holes in the punching dummy. Then, Lu stated he wanted to try again, admitting that he made a mistake and should have distributed his power instead of concentrating it. The examiner was shocked by Lu's strength. After all, piercing the dummy was several times more difficult than breaking it. Unaware, Lu just felt embarrassed that he couldn't even break a wooden dummy. Subsequently, he struck with full power, causing the dummy to first crack and appear with countless fissures, then explode into pieces with a bang. Lu proudly asked if he had passed. The examiner stammered, "Yes, you passed." Moments later, Lu arrived at the final registration place. He stated that he had passed all the tests, so now it was his turn to make requests. Counting on his fingers, he said he didn't have many requests, just a free place for children to learn and a house close to work would suffice. If possible, it would be even better to find a wet nurse to help him with the child. The interviewer was speechless at his demands and then kicked Lu out, assuming he was just trying to find fault. Fortunately, the Thousand Dragon Society was recruiting warriors, so he rushed over to the Thousand Dragon Society. As expected, he easily passed all the exams. Subsequently, he put forward his request at the Sword and Knife sect. To his surprise, the other party readily agreed, even consenting to help take care of the children. Lu was very satisfied with this. This was how the 4 major sects should be. When night fell, Lu looked at the 3 children on the bed, feeling somewhat worried. He asked himself internally if he could raise the children well. In fact, he could rely on theft to support the children, but he wanted to be a good father. Unfortunately, all he knew was how to kill, which made Lu feel somewhat melancholic. But the next moment, he determined that he could not allow himself to become weak. Even if he didn't know the methods of parenting, it didn't matter. As long as he did what he needed to do according to others' examples, it would be fine. The man spent a fortune hiring a wet nurse, but the ones who arrived were either unreliable young girls or 86-year-old grandmothers who had lost all their teeth. Just when the man was at his wit's end, a seemingly reliable woman finally appeared. The woman surveyed the messy house a couple of times, then started tidying it up. Not long after, cries began to echo from the house. The woman rushed into the inner room, and moments later, she came out holding the 3 children. Then she skillfully began to feed the children. Lu was blushing at this scene. The wet nurse was successfully found. Lu approached the person in charge to inquire about his job responsibilities. He is now a class warrior of the Thousand Dragon Society, which is the highest level among the warriors employed by the Thousand Dragon Society. Lu's task was to guard the door. The person in charge comforted Lu by saying, although you are a class warrior, you might find it strange to be assigned to guard duty. However, every new class of warrior must first serve as a doorkeeper. Then, the person in charge indicated that he would arrange for Lu to rotate positions after some time. But Lu excitedly said he was very satisfied. He felt being a guard was great. There was no need to arrange a rotation for him as he was willing to remain a guard indefinitely. The person in charge thought Lu was a bit unusual, as guarding was typically a place for those who had been punished. However, he didn't dwell on it. Lu thought that this job was fantastic. After all, no madman would dare to break into the Thousand Dragon Society's doors. Even when he went out to fight, the guards wouldn't need to leave their posts, which was very safe. When night fell, Lu exhausted all his means to coax the children to sleep, but they remained incredibly energetic. After what seemed like an eternity, the children finally fell into a deep sleep. Lu carefully moved toward the edge of the bed and cautiously laid the children down. But as soon as he laid them down, one child immediately opened their eyes and then began to wail. The other 2, hearing this, also started to cry simultaneously. After being tormented for half the night, Lu had no choice but to hold the children to sleep. There is no problem with sleeping this way, but he fears that he might accidentally crush the child under him while asleep. So, he ties his legs with curtains and fills the bed with pillows. A few months later, Lu is extremely satisfied with his job as a doorman and finished his day's work. However, at that moment, the bearded man, who was responsible for managing them, finds him. The bearded man indicates that there is an urgent task to assign to him the day after tomorrow. At first, Lu does not want to take on this task because the day after tomorrow is his rest day. But when the bearded man offers to Tales of Silver as a subsidy, he agrees immediately. The content of this task is to carry out a 5-day escort mission. 5 days later, during the mission, everyone else is riding horses, but Lu insists on walking. He states that his legs are stronger and he walks faster.